Although there are several mechanisms that rule the regulation of blood pressure in the systemic circulation, there are some special vasculatures that are regulated in a different manner. These vasculatures are called special circulations. First, we are going to talk about the lung vasculature. We can see in the lungs there must be two different circulations, one that introduces the interchange of gases and one nutritional circulation. Thereby, we can find the pulmonary circulation and the bronchial circulation. The pulmonary circulation conducts the blood to the lungs in order to produce the gas interchange. On the other hand, we have the bronchial circulation. The bronchial circulation is a shunt between the pulmonary artery and the pulmonary vein, and this bronchial circulation provides oxygen and nutrients to the different lung structures and to the bronchial and bronchial smooth muscle. Thereby, the bronchial circulation has a nutritional role. If we determine the differences with the major circulation, we can find that the vessels in the pulmonary circulation are shorter, have a greater diameter, and the thickness of the smooth muscle in these vessels is lower. Consequently, the pulmonary circulation, the pulmonary vessels have a greater distensibility compared to the major circulation vessels. This gives this pulmonary circulation a function of blood reservoir. Consequently, we can find a lower resistance in this pulmonary circulation. This is translated in a lower pulmonary pressure. If we see the Wiggers diagram, if we relate the different pressures in the Wiggers diagram, we can see a lower pressure in the pulmonary circulation. We have lower resistance, lower pressure, and the blood flow will be more or less similar to the obtained in the major circulation. There is a similar blood flow, a bit lower because from the pulmonary circulation starts both the bronchial and the coronary circulations. The pulmonary blood flow is mainly regulated by local mechanisms, in which hypoxia have a mandatory role. This situation of hypoxia produces a vasoconstriction. For example, if one alveoli receives a low oxygen amount of oxygen and a great amount of carbon dioxide, the vessels that irrigate this alveoli constrict. It is produced a local vasoconstriction. Consequently, we will have a greater blood flow in the alveoli that have an appropriate amount of oxygen, and we eliminate the blood flow through the alveoli which do not have the appropriate amount of oxygen. This is the main regulatory mechanism of pulmonary circulation, but there are other mechanisms. For example, the innervation, the autonomic system also can regulate the pulmonary circulation, although the evidences of this regulation are very low. Other mechanisms that can regulate the pulmonary circulation are the hormonal mechanisms. There are multiple vasoactive factors: adrenaline, noradrenaline, histamine, prostacyclin, or nitric oxide, that can either vasoconstrict or vasodilate the pulmonary vessels, thereby producing a great amount of blood flow through the alveoli and allowing a better oxygen and carbon dioxide interchange. The coronary circulation is also part of the special circulations. Remember that the heart is formed by cardiac myocytes. These myocytes require a great amount of energy in order to produce a heartbeat. Consequently, these cells have a great amount of mitochondria. This mitochondria provides energy to the myocyte due to the metabolism of lipids, glucose, lactate, cetonic body, or amino acids. As you can see, the most important nutrient in the heart muscle are the lipids. In order to provide the heart muscle these nutrients, we can find in the heart a great amount of vascularization. This heart muscle is highly vascularized. This allows the heart to extract a great amount of oxygen. The cardiac output of the heart muscle in rest is about 50% of the total cardiac output. And this cardiac output increases during the exercise, when we are practicing exercise. Thus, when the cardiac output is increased, there is an enhancement in oxygen consumption, and in order to provide more oxygen to the cardiac muscle, there will be a greater coronary blood flow. Regarding the regulation of coronary circulation, it is important to remember that the heart is always beating. We are always having a process of systole or diastole, producing a contraction and a dilation of the heart. This contraction and dilation modifies the coronary blood flow. Consequently, during the systole, there is a coronary compression, producing a diminished coronary blood flow. However, there is always a coronary blood flow, there is always a blood circulation in the heart, independently of the phase that we are studying. On the contrary, during the systole, there is a cardiac muscle relaxation. This produces a dilation of the coronary blood flow and of the coronary circulation, and consequently the coronary blood flow is increased. Since we must always have coronary blood flow, there must be a process of auto-regulation in order to keep the blood flow circulating through the coronary circulation. But there are also other mechanisms that regulate the coronary circulation. For example, when there is a decrease in pH or oxygen or an increase of carbon dioxide, there is an enhancement of coronary circulation. These metabolic mechanisms thereby control the coronary circulation. There are also local mechanisms, local endothelial factors like nitric oxide, like prostaglandins, and so on, that can be released from the endothelium, and can also be released from other cells, from the circulatory system, from the blood. Okay, these factors diffuse to the smooth muscle cells, producing a vasoconstriction or vasodilation depending on the factor that we are studying. The parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system also play a relevant role in the regulation of coronary circulation. This nerve regulation can produce both direct or indirect effects in the coronary circulation. The modifications produced by the direct and the indirect effects are opposite. Thus, the sympathetic nervous system, which releases noradrenaline, directly produces vasoconstriction, consequently reducing the coronary blood flow. On the other hand, we also have a parasympathetic regulation of coronary blood flow. The parasympathetic nervous system, due to the release of its neurotransmitter, the acetylcholine, enhances the coronary blood flow due to a vasodilation. On the other hand, the sympathetic nervous system, remember that produces a positive inotropic and chronotropic effect, apart from the lusitropic and chronotropic effects. Consequently, there will be an increased heart contraction, myocardial muscle contraction, and heart rate, and consequently there will be an enhancement in the cardiac muscle metabolism. This will produce a decrease in oxygen and pH, and consequently the sympathetic nervous system will indirectly produce an increase in coronary blood flow. The indirect effects of sympathetic nervous system are more relevant, are more potent in the regulation of the coronary blood flow. Finally, we are going to finish with the cerebral circulation. Under the anatomical point of view, the cerebral circulation is very complex because it must irrigate almost all parts of the brain. In order to do this and not letting any area of the brain unirrigated, all of the vessels starts from a circle structure called Willis polygon. Okay, and this Willis polygon provides the blood almost to every area, and this special structure allows the brain to be always irrigated independently of if we had a little shunt or a little clot in any area of the brain. Due to this great brain irrigation, the cerebral circulation has almost a 15% of the total cardiac output. This consequently is related with the great oxygen consumption that the brain has. It is also very important to note that the cerebral vessels are submitted to a great intracranial pressure influences due to the cerebrospinal fluid. As we mentioned before, the human brain has a great energetic demand, which is necessary to be maintained through an almost continuous vascular supply. For this, the brain has an auto-regulation system, which is the ability that the brain blood vessels have in order to modify their diameter to keep the blood flux constant during the perfusion changes. These auto-regulation mechanisms is called cerebral vasoreactivity and is regulated by different mechanisms. First, we have an autoregulation which depends on the blood pressure. The blood pressure is maintained around 50 millimeters of mercury and almost 130 millimeters of mercury. If there are alterations in the mean arterial pressure, this arterial pressure through the blood brain is constant in order to supply a constant blood flow. There is also a metabolic regulation, which is controlled by the gas pressure and the oxygen pressure. Okay, the oxygen and carbon dioxide pressure. If there is an increase in carbon dioxide, there will be consequently an enhancement in cerebral blood flow because there will be a production of protons which induce a vasodilation in the cerebral vessels. This increase in protons, this diminished pH, reduces the neural activity. Consequently, the increase in the cerebral blood flow helps the blood flow to eliminate these protons from the cerebral tissue. On the other hand, if we have a low amount of oxygen in the brain, there will be a closing, there will be a cerebral vasodilation in order to re-establish an appropriate oxygen flux through the brain. As you can see, the most relevant mechanism in order to regulate the cerebral blood flow is this autoregulation derived produced by the alterations of arterial pressure. We can also have a nervous regulation of the cerebral blood flow. Both sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems are implicated in the regulation of cerebral blood flow, but among all of the mechanisms implicated in this regulation, the nervous regulation is the less relevant.